So you want to know the actual and realistic way to start and run a successful Amazon business? Well, I'm going to show you the exact step-by-step process on what it takes to start a business and what it takes to scale it up. Amazon is definitely a capital-intensive business, but with the right processes in place, you can make some huge money. I myself have made over $16,000 in one single month. So in this video, I created a step-by-step breakdown of what it takes to start the business and what the first 8 weeks are going to look like, whether you have $1,000 to start with or whether you have $10,000 to start with. If you've been wondering what it takes to run a successful Amazon business, watch to the end because there's going to be a ton of value breaking down the numbers. Let's get into it. All right, so here is my Amazon blueprint. I have two different paths, one where you're starting the business with $1,000 and one where you're starting the business with $10,000. Let's go through the $1,000 channel first and show you exactly what it looks like in your first 8 weeks or basically 2 months running this business. So first we want to understand what are the expenses in this business. We want to keep these as low as possible, especially right away when we're first starting out. So the essential softwares that we're going to need are Keepa, SellerAmp, our seller account, and Inventory Lab is definitely an optional one. If you don't have much money to start with, you probably don't need Inventory Lab. You can still send shipments through Seller Central and it works just fine. So our Keepa subscription is $20, SellerAmp $25, our seller account is $40 a month, and then supplies, which is a one-time purchase, you're going to spend around $50. You might spend a little less than that, which is great, but basically you don't need a label printer. You can just use a printer. You can go to the library and print for free, right? You need these 30 up labels is what you're going to actually need to purchase, which is an 8.5 by 11 sheet that just has a bunch of UPC 1" by 2" labels. And you're going to need those for each product that you're sending in. Potential poly bags, boxes, and tape. You can also probably get boxes for free on Facebook Marketplace. A lot of people that just moved are always just giving rid of the U-Haul boxes, or you can go to stores and literally ask store managers, hey, do you have any boxes that you're getting rid of that I could take? Right? You want to get larger boxes, but keep the dimensions under 25 inches. That's what Amazon's limit is when sending to Amazon. So of the expenses in our first 2 months, it's going to be either $360 if we're including Inventory Lab, $220 if we're not including Inventory Lab. For the calculation, I did use $360 in both channels here just to make the numbers easy. But in the first channel, we're going to calculate our total profit with only spending $220 in our expenses. So that means we have $640 left over to spend on inventory. And again, we're not going to try to pay ourselves as long as possible because we want this money to multiply as quickly as we can. So in the first week of our Amazon business, our goal is to spend all $640 on inventory with the intention to find on average 30% ROI items. Now that means some of our items might be 40, 50%. Some of our items are hopefully going to be, down to 25%, but I don't want to go too much lower and hope that our numbers average out. Try to find as high ROI items as possible, but also make sure they're selling quickly because with this model, you want to turn your inventory over as fast as possible. So the goal is to find fast moving items, but also maintaining at least a 30% ROI. So if we do some quick math, out of the $640 we're spending with a 30% ROI, we're going to make a potential profit of $192 on our first shipment. So after sending in our shipment in week 1, we're going to move on to week 2 where we're basically just waiting for that shipment to arrive. And there is going to be some downtime and some waiting and some buffering between weeks. And that's just kind of how an Amazon business runs. There is some lag, there is some delay. So in that time, when you're waiting for things to happen, you want to be always learning on how to improve your business. And the number one way to improve your business is to increase your skill in sourcing and finding leads. So during this week, you're going to be sourcing and you're going to be finding leads and you're going to be building up your lead list so you can be better at sourcing, so you can find higher ROI items often. In the third week, basically inventory is going to start selling. And if you have time in between, you're going to want to keep improving that skill of sourcing. By the end of week 4, so we basically given ourselves all of week 3 and all of week 4 to start selling that inventory. We're going to assume that 75% of that first shipment sells out. So if we do some quick math, we have that $640 on inventory spend times 75% means that we're going to collect $480 of the stuff that's sold in our first payout. And then of the $192 of total profit that we are projecting on this first shipment, we're going to get $144 out of that, which is 75%. So from the sales that happen, we're going to collect $624 in our first payout. Sometimes Amazon takes a little bit longer to pay you out for the stuff that's sold, but for this model, we're just going to look at week 5 is when we collect our first payment. So of that first payout, we are not going to pay ourselves any money. We want to scale this business as quick as possible. And if you pay yourself of any of that profit money, you're not going to scale this business any quicker than you would. So we're going to try to spend another $624, all that money we collected on inventory. So in that 5th week of the inventory that we're buying, we're going to make a profit potential of $187 on that second shipment. And of course, at the end of that week, we're going to send all that inventory into Amazon. So we're on to week 6, and that inventory in your second shipment is going to start selling, as well as the rest of the inventory in your first shipment. So by the end of week 7, which means we had all of week 6 and all of week 7 for our inventory in our second shipment to start selling, we're going to assume again that 75% of that second shipment sells, and the entire 25%, the rest of our first shipment, is also going to sell out. So of the first shipment, based on the inventory and the profit we had left to make, we're going to collect $208 in the payout. And then of the second shipment, we're still taking 75% of what we sent in. So that's $468 plus $187. We're taking 75% of that. So we're going to collect $140 of the second shipment's profit. So we're already up to week 8, and we're going to collect our second payout by the end of week 8. That payout is going to be $816. And again, that's the rest of the first shipment and 75% of the second shipment. Already on to the entire totals for the first 2 months of selling on Amazon. Our first shipment's profit that we fully collected was $192, and 75% of the second shipment's profit that we collected is $140. Of course, we're collecting all the money we spent on our inventory back because the products are selling, and we're getting our profit on top of that. So calculating all the transactions that took place, we started with our $1,000. We made $192 on our first shipment, $140 on our second shipment, and then not including the inventory lab expense, we spent $220 in the first 2 months on expenses, which means in total, our bank account will see $1,112. So by the end of 8 weeks, we only made $112 in our Amazon business. But don't let this number discourage you. This business can scale super quick, especially if you're putting all of your profits back into the business. Because now that we always have residual inventory from the previous shipment continuing to sell as we're sending in new inventory, that profit number is going to start scaling a lot faster than it did in the first month or two. So before you skip this video because you think, wow, selling on Amazon is definitely not worth it, look at how little profit we're going to make. Let's look at the $10,000 business process to see how quickly we can scale the numbers here and how much more profit we're actually going to generate in our business in just the first 2 months. So again, our expenses are going to be very similar. We're going to have all the same subscriptions, and we are going to include an inventory lab into our calculation here, which means the first 2 months of expenses, we're only going to spend $360. So that means, again, I'm just keeping the same numbers from before, adding a zero basically. We're going to only spend $6,400 on inventory, and we're actually going to keep the $3,240 left in savings, whether we want to increase our expenses, help us scale faster, whether we're getting a prep center or maybe hiring a virtual assistant to help with the inventory spend. But right away, we're just going to keep that money aside for anything we want to do with the business. So week 1, the goal is to still spend that $6,400 on inventory, and we're going to keep that 30% average ROI. We want to get at least that much on our items, especially if the price changes on those items or we get some returns, right? The ROI is going to drop. So we want to get at least a 30% ROI. And of course, that week 1, we're going to send in the shipment of all that inventory we spent. So the profit potential on this first shipment is $1,920. Already you can see just having more money to spend on inventory is going to increase your profits by a ton. So week 2, we're just going to wait for that shipment to arrive again. And we still want to increase our skill in sourcing. That's the number one skill you can have in an Amazon business, is being good at finding profitable products. So we're going to keep improving our skill there while we're waiting for our shipment to arrive. And then in week 3, the inventory is going to start selling. And by week 4, we're going to have the same assumptions where we think 75% of our inventory is going to sell out from that first shipment. So doing some quick math, again, 75% of what we spent is $4,800. 75% of the profit potential is $1,440. So from the sales that we made, $6,240 will be collected in our first payout. So in week 5, we're collecting our first payout, and that means we have a bunch more money to spend on more inventory. So we're going to try to spend the entire $6,240 that we collected in our first payout on inventory. Again, we're not going to pay ourselves any money, even though we made a good chunk of profit, right? We want to scale this business to a full-time income so we're able to really generate some awesome wealth here that then you can start paying yourself. So we're going to make another potential profit of $1,870 on the second shipment. And of course, by the end of that week, we're going to try to send in all of that inventory to Amazon. So in week 6, some of that inventory is going to start selling, as well as the rest of our first shipment's inventory. We're going to sell out of the rest of that. So that means by the end of week 7, we're going to assume 75% of our second shipment is starting to sell, and the rest of our first shipment sells. So that 25% that we had left over in inventory from our first shipment, all of that is going to sell out. So of our first shipment, the inventory and profit that was left over from what we didn't get paid out already sold, which means we're going to collect $2,080. And then of the second shipment, we're collecting 75% of the inventory and profit there, which is $4,680. and $1,400. Week eight's payout is going to be $8,160, which is crazy. So calculate our totals for the first 2 months here. We have our first shipment's profit of $1,920. Our second shipment, 75% of that profit is $1,400. So calculating the total of what we spent versus what we earned, we have started with $10,000 plus our profits of the first two shipments minus our total expenses for the first 2 months puts us at a total in our bank account of $12,960. And by the end of those first 8 weeks, we have profited $2,960 in our Amazon business. So as you can see, the profit potential in this business, depending on how much you have to spend on inventory, can make this super lucrative. And to show you how scalable it is, no matter how much money you have to spend on inventory, our first payout was $624, and our second payout was already almost $200 more than that. So just think how much more profit is in that second payout than the first. So every new payout you're collecting, assuming you're putting all of your money back into the business, it's going to be higher and higher, which means your profits are just going to keep snowballing into a larger number. So no matter how much money you have to start an Amazon business, you can be successful. You just need to understand what it's going to take and what are the numbers. So my advice to you is learn how to source, become an expert at what it takes to find good products, and really keep track of your numbers. If you understand how much you're collecting in each payout, how much is profit, and how much needs to go to expenses, you're going to really start to see a really profitable side hustle and potentially full-time income. So after watching this video, hopefully you all understand exactly what it takes to start an Amazon business in 2025. If you found some value here, would love if you subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next one.